Hello, San Diego. How y'all doing? How you doing? How you doing? Okay. I think there's some expectation I'm going to get everybody to their feet. I'm not that kind of a speaker, but I'll try to channel Oprah and go, you get equality, you get equality, you get equality, you get equality, you get equality. All right. I also have sports on my mind because I missed the end of that Minnesota Viking game. Oh my goodness. Woo! And so I often think of San Diego in reference to sports. The late Junior Seau, who I really, really loved. And there's Marcus Allen here. I know he is the Marcus Allen, but not the running back Marcus Allen. And then I think I saw Bill Walton walking in with his big old self there. So also, as an OG baby boomer, I wish I had thought of having Sly Stone's song Stand playing when some of you don't know that song, but some of you do, playing when I came out. I'm very, very honored to be here. This is amazing. All of you are giving me energy because we need to give each other energy in these very difficult times. There you go, there you go, all right. Oh good, there's some folks as loud as me in the audience, all right, all right. Also, I'd like to thank Andrea, who's really quite remarkable. I've known her for 21 years. I knew her pre-Django, and so I'd like to also thank her husband and her parents and her son, if they could stand up and if we could thank them for sharing her with us. I was here years ago speaking before the San Diego NAACP, and I learned that Dr. King actually visited San Diego. La Chela is here someplace, I hope, my buddy. There you, hi girl, how you doing? And who are other NAACP people here that I spoke before them years ago? I also want to say I was taking notes as the morning was going on, and I love the fact that you had artists up here. Somebody once wrote that art knows no fear, and in these difficult times, we're going to need art to lift our spirits, to express our views in other ways, so art is very, very important. These are very difficult and challenging times. When I arrived in San Diego last night, I ran into a dreamer, and I was asking him if he was afraid, and he said, well, he was, but he's not anymore. He feels very hopeful. So we've got to make sure that the dreamers are protected. I think Andrea lives in DC working on their behalf, so we have to support the dreamers. Andrea asked me to come speak over the Christmas holiday, and I was trying to just chill, but no one says no to Andrea, so I said I would come. And then I immediately knew what I wanted to talk about and started writing this speech in my head. I'm a big Twitter fan. I get most of my news from Twitter. And somebody on Twitter once said that what we've done to Dr. King is we've defanged him, we have neutralized him, we have turned him into Santa Claus, somebody who really doesn't stand for anything, although for the kids, Santa Claus stands for a lot. And we also know that Santa Claus is white, according to Fox News. But what I'm trying to say is that we've tried to make him just someone who doesn't really stand for anything. And I hope I don't offend any Republicans in the room, but you know that they've defanged Martin Luther King when our president can stand up and say, I love Dr. King. Now we know President Trump would have hated Dr. King, would have given him like a crazy name. But when they kind of take the juice, the meatiness, the ferocity out of King, we know we're in trouble. So what I wanted today to do was to talk about what he stood for, since your theme is stand. So what I want to do is talk about some of the things that he stood for, and then talk about how it relates to us in 2018 and what we can do going forward. His kind of guiding principle was the notion of the beloved community. And as I look out here today, you all are his beloved community. His notion was that we're all interconnected, that we have to support each other with love. And so that was kind of his guiding principle. And the notion of this as the all people celebration really totally stands for his notion of the beloved community. But let's look at the specifics of what he stood for. First of all, he was very spiritual. And I'm so glad that Andrea mentioned the concept of love. I was talking to a reporter outside and he said, in these times of everybody being so angry, isn't there another message? And I said, well, there is a message of love. I think that's important. But Dr. King also knew that according to his theology of Christianity, you are known by your works. It's not just enough to be holy, holy, holy. You have to figure out if there's evil in the world and do something about it. Thank you. All of the world's great religions counsel that, whether it's compassion, in the Jewish faith, the notion of tikkun. So with that in mind, can we just have a moment of silence? You can pray, you can be quiet, you can meditate, and when I think that there's going to be a nuclear war and there's nothing I can do about it, what I try to do is pray and connect myself on a spiritual level with all the people in the world who want peace, and that's most of us. There's a concept called Gaia that means the world is all connected, and so just for a moment, connect with everybody here in the room, connect with the people all over the world who want peace, because I think we will ultimately prevail. So just a moment of silence. Thank you. Obviously, Dr. King was also very concerned with the issue of race. When he was alive, we had American apartheid. Separate but equal was the law of the land. I was born in Texas in 1949 when separate but equal was the law. And that's the reality that Dr. King grew up in. He's known for the Montgomery bus boycott, where Black people had to sit at the back of the bus. He endorsed the Freedom Riders. He endorsed the people who did the sit-ins at the lunch counters. He was about race, so that's one of the things that he did and is not a Santa Claus thing to do. The next thing he talked about was inclusivity. I did a little reading on him, and in 1966, when Cesar Chavez was involved in helping the United Farm Workers, Dr. King sent him a telegram supporting him. There are many other examples of his inclusivity, but I want to come back to that in a minute. Also, in 1963, in the spring, he was going around the country getting enthusiasm for the March on Washington, which was to happen that August. And when he got off the planes, he saw white people, Asian American people, Latino people, as well as Black people. He thought that just Black people were in favor of racial equality, but when he saw that there were people of all races and ethnicities supporting him, he was buoyed. He wasn't sure if he wanted to do the March on Washington. His lieutenant, Bayard Rustin, a gay man, was the person really pushing for the march, and so King saw that people of all races and ethnicities in the country were behind racial equality. The next thing, he talked about economics. I talked about the lunch counter sit-ins that he talked about. Well, he often said, if you don't have money to buy a hamburger, sitting at the lunch counter isn't going to do you any good. And he talked about the triple evils of poverty, racism, and militarism. So he was very, very much for economic justice. When he was in Memphis, he was there helping sanitation workers get equality, and that's where he died. He also was about to go to Washington to do a Poor People's March in 1968. I mentioned that, thank you. I mentioned that he was against militarism and war. One of the things that was most controversial about Dr. King in his later years was that he denounced the war in Vietnam. This alienated him from Lyndon Baines Johnson. I don't know if you've seen the Ken Burns special on Vietnam, but this is an element of it. If you read any of the history of Lyndon Baines Johnson, you'll understand he was furious at King for opposing the war. So were many traditional civil rights leaders, and it took a lot of courage for him to stand up and go against the tide. He also was for civil disobedience. Now, I can't imagine Santa Claus getting arrested, but Dr. King was arrested. He had the courage of his convictions, and it came from a deeply spiritual place. So these are some of the things that he stood for. Now, how is this relevant to us today? First of all, We need to try to come to these battles with love. It's very, very difficult, and I'm able to do it with everybody except Donald Trump. The only thing I can do, I just am not that good. I'm not that good. I have a spiritual person who helps me. She says, you have to love Trump. I said, are you crazy? I said, would you have loved Hitler? She said, yes. I said, you're a much better person than I am. The best I can do is turn away from the television when I see him and not hate him. But aside from him, I can pretty much love everybody. And I'm very, very serious about this. Che Guevara talked about the fact that revolution is motivated by great feelings of love. And this is what Dr. King was about. It's difficult to do, but it eases your burden. It takes that toxicity and poison out of your system. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the challenge of that in a minute. So first of all, remembering our spiritual roots, going back to our spiritual roots. Second, race. We have a president who is a white supremacist. I don't know why people say he's racially insensitive, he's not politically correct, this is the way bar people talk. I've been to bars, I haven't heard people say what I hear him say. He is a straight up white supremacist racist. There's no doubt about it. And I said that trying to be loving as I said it. So we've got to fight white supremacy in all its manifestations. The way he's just using DACA as a political football. I was listening to Maria Hinojosa on CNN last week, and she talked about the fear that many undocumented people live in. They think someone's going to knock on the door and take them away. When Trump was rising, I started doing a lot of reading about Nazi Germany and saw a lot of very troubling parallels between what's going on now and what went on there. And the notion that Jews could have the door knocked on and they were taken away, to me, feels very similar to what's happening to undocumented people, and it's just wrong. And this is a form of white supremacy. To the parents in the room, I'm going to apologize for what I'm going to say next, but the president said it. But when he talks about Haiti, El Salvador, and African countries as shithole countries, that is straight up white supremacy. I was in Kenya a year ago now, and I think I see my Maasai person here. Yes, 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 the Maasai. I was so happy to see you. It feels like home, and I feel like I'm going to cry. Thank you. But to talk about those countries in the way that he did is straight up white supremacy. And did you see how he's just lying about it? He said, I didn't say it. Then you've got Senators Cotton and Perdue saying, well, we don't recall him saying it. And then a day later, they go, oh, he never said it. Now, if your children said that, they would be put on permanent timeout for lying. And nobody calls him a liar. He is a liar. I hope I don't get the Alliance in trouble. They didn't know I was going to say these things, and it's not their fault, so nobody get mad. He also started his candidacy on my birthday on June 16th, attacking Mexicans as rapists. And it's interesting, I don't know if you connected the dots, and I don't think he caused this, but the very next day was the attack on the Mother Emanuel Church, where people in prayer brought a white supremacist into them because they did love, and they were massacred. We've seen protesters massacred, we've seen people beaten up, we've seen the Southern Poverty Law Center says that the number of racially motivated attacks is on the ascendancy. You see kids in school being attacked, you see kids yelling, little racist children, I didn't think kids could be racist, but I guess they can, yelling Trump, Trump, Trump when they're trying to offend other people. We've also got Islamophobia. We want to keep all Muslims out of the country. What's that about? Luckily, and most people used to hate lawyers. Now lawyers, people like us again. I'm so glad. But But one of my most wonderful moments was seeing all the lawyers, I feel emotional about this, at the airports when the travel ban came about. And lawyers are valiantly going into court. Yes, yes. Lawyers are going into court to protect the Constitution. He's trying to pack the courts with right-wing people who are just incredibly unqualified. I don't know if you saw the TV interview with the guy who knew nothing. They kept asking him questions, Now, do you think a woman, a Latino, a Muslim, a black person could have had the audacity to get up and be nominated for a federal judgeship knowing nothing? But these are the days that we're in. We see Native Americans being harassed. We see the Standing Rock situation where environmental degradation is going on, harming Native Americans. We need to understand the racial nature of the policies that are being pronounced. When they talk about cutting off Medicaid and trying to make people work, the underlying subtext, the dog whistle, if you will, but now it's a bullhorn, is that the people on Medicaid and who are getting welfare are black and brown people. They're lazy, even though most of the people getting welfare are white, but the Republican Party has been able to sell it as something that just is affecting people of color. So when they very cavalierly say that sick people getting Medicaid must work, they are basically saying you lazy black and brown people, you're not going to take our tax dollars. So keep in mind what's going on and understand the racial subtext of the policies. Lastly, I was in my hotel last night and I was burning sage, because I'm like that, I'm from Northern California. And, and when I used to burn sage, I go, oh no, it's going to look like a Thai stick, whatever a Thai stick is. And then last night I went, but marijuana is legal, so it doesn't matter. It's just like, what? And those of us boomers used to like spray deodorant in the room. I heard this was done. It's just remarkable to think that we can do this in relative peace, except for Jefferson Beauregard Sessions, who wants to use federal law to come into our states to lock up more black and brown people. That's what this is about. It's about white supremacy. Aren't the Republicans the party of states' rights? Aren't they supposed to leave us alone? So there's a racial subtext to this. The private prison industry donated heavily to Trump. And think about this. Our nation has made money trading on the bodies, and I think one of the spoken word group people talked about this, trading on the bodies of black and brown people. And once again, people are going to get rich using the bodies of black and brown people, but this is using them in prisons to make money. I found it interesting that a couple of states banned the reading of the book, The New Jim Crow, which says a lot. Luckily, lawyers, yay, got involved again, and The New Jim Crow can be read, but that talks very clearly about the racial dynamics of mass incarceration. So racism shows itself in many ways, blatant ways, but also subtle ways, and we must be aware of that and call it out. And we need to say plainly, as Don Lemon did, our president is a racist. I don't know if you saw this, but last week when it was so disgusting. He was like having this proclamation for Dr. King. And I don't know how you are, but I look at the black people with him and I go, who are you? I go, thank you, my brother. Like, what the hell are you doing there? And then as he's walking out, did you ever think you'd hear reporters yelling, Mr. President, are you a racist? It's just like, what? It's insane. So anyway, we also need to understand the racial history of our country. So there's lots to do about race. Next point, his inclusivity. We need to understand the history and experiences of other people. I know a lot about being black in America, but I need to know a lot about being Latino in America, being Jewish in America, being LGBTQ in America. So we need to learn about each other's history so we're as fluent in other people's experiences as we are with ourselves. Recently, we have a woman working in our office who's in a wheelchair, and it's just been kind of mind-boggling to realize, I guess it's called ableism. We've had to change the door so she can get in the door. When we have meetings, we need to make room for her wheelchair. When I want to say things like stand, nothing against this group at all, but you have to think about the implications it might have in the mind of a disabled person. So that's a community I've needed to learn more about. We need to have real friendships with people from other races and ethnicities. Somebody once asked of a white person, have you ever had a black person in your home for dinner? Have I ever had a Latino or Muslim in my home? And so we need to have real friendships, because then we understand. It's not just an abstract understanding of oppression and other people's reality, but it's also you have people that you love. We also need to make sure we're not in the oppression Olympics. My people are more oppressed than your people. We don't have time for that. We do not have time for that at all. As I was thinking about my remarks, here's one unanswered question that I put to all of you, and I don't have the answer. There are some people who voted for Trump who thought that he'd help them economically. There's some people who were just straight up racist, who hated the idea that black people were in the White House. Something that racists have done since the Civil War is they've said to white people, well, you may be poor, but you're not a nigger. And this is part of what the Republican Party, the kind of unevolved Republicans, because there are some decent Republicans. As Trump often says, Lincoln was a Republican. But what do we do with the people? I want to reach out to people. I want to have communion with people. I want to try to persuade people. But the question I cannot ask is, are there people who are just, as Hillary Clinton said, the deplorables? Are there people who think I am inferior because I'm black and there's no way to reach them? I don't have an answer to that question. I just want to leave that with you. How do we reach across the gulf to our country is so polarized, and is it permanently polarized? It's in the interest of both parties to keep that polarization going, but is there a way to truly reach people who are racist? We've seen stories of people who are racist who turn themselves around, but can we do it? Okay, let's go to King and economics. Look at the tax bill. No one in America wanted that tax bill except the rich donors. The Republicans were straight up on this. They said the donors say if we don't get this bill through, they're not going to give us any money. So you have a tax bill that's going to take health care away from people, that's going to take away money for charitable contributions to nonprofits, that sucks the money up to the very rich people. One of the things I think we need to do is think about full public financing of elections, to take money out of politics. So that people vote for things because they think it's the right thing to do and not because they think their donors are going to cut them out. Once again, I talked earlier about the racial dynamics of shredding the safety net. There are people in Kentucky who aren't going to get Medicaid, and they think, oh, good, we've really torpedoed Obamacare, not realizing that it's going to hurt them. But there's, once again, a racial component to this. Charles Blow of the New York Times wrote an incredible article last week talking about why white supremacy drives policy, and you'll see that in our economics. The last thing is very troubling. This guy, Paul Ryan, and I think he may not be running again, thank God, because I look at this guy and I think he's just evil, because he's pushing things that's going to result in people dying. Taking health care away from people is going to result in people dying, and he doesn't seem to care. He is an adherent of the policies of Ayn Rand that seem to indicate if you're not rich, it's your own damn fault and you might as well die. And he's pushing policies that will result in people dying. So some of this is racist, some of it is ideological, and we've got to combat it. Dr. King would have done this. Violence, militarism. This was another theme of Dr. King's. We need to look at the defense budget, which is bloated. Also, we need to stop the saber rattling. There was an earthquake in Northern California about 10 days ago, and part of me went, oh, is that a nuclear bomb? And then the people in Hawaii thought they were being attacked. Can you even imagine? If this had been the Obama administration, nobody would have, hid in their garage freaking out. They would have gone, it's just a mistake. But under Trump, you think a nuclear ballistic missile could be coming your way. Congressperson Ted Lieu has put forth a bill that basically tries to limit the first strike capabilities of a president, and I think that's a good idea. And then I'm going to come full circle. I don't know how to stop Trump. I hope that Mattis and Kelly and McMaster's have hidden the nuclear codes. He thinks there's a button. People said it's just a button to get more Diet Coke. It's not a button to start a war. But every time I think that these two knucklehead guys with bombs are going to start a war, I just pray because I don't know what else to do. Last thing that he talked about was, excuse me? Oh yeah, I'm getting to that. Last thing is civil disobedience. When I was reading about the Nazis, I thought, well, is there gonna come a day when I'm gonna have to get arrested? I'm real persnickety and I don't think I do well in jail, just saying. But I've gotta realize that I may need to go to jail. For example, if he fires Mueller, I'm out in the streets. So as I was doing research for this speech, I remembered a letter from a Birmingham jail, and Dr. King looked like he was pretty neat too, so he handled jail, so maybe I could handle jail as well. I read something on Twitter that said, if you want to know what you would have done in the early days of Nazi Germany, look at what you're doing now. And I kind of live by those words. So, what are the lessons for 2018 as we stand for fairness and equality? These are in no particular order, but these are the messages I want to leave on your heart. We need to be hopeful. Some days you wake up, you read the paper, and you just go, Lord have mercy. And you just go, I just can't do anymore. I just can't do this any longer. My heroine is Harriet Tubman. I think of my ancestors who were in slavery. And look, I'm in San Diego in this beautiful place. Nobody's making me pick cotton. And if they could do what they did, I can keep on. So we got to do that and be hopeful. There's that great Maya Angelou quote, I am the hope and dream of the slave. And I used to think it was just me, but we are the hope and dream of the slave. They never could have imagined that people would come on a holiday when you could be out shopping. You're in this auditorium celebrating a black man. We also need to be patient. I am speaking as a 501c3 person, so I can't tell you what party to vote for. Wink, wink, wink. I can't. But we've got to be patient. And every time there's some crazy stuff that goes on, I go, midterms, midterms, midterms. Because if we can change the composition of the Congress, certain things can happen. We also need to be resilient. We need to be resilient. We're in the middle of just crazy, crazy times. And so we need to be resilient and know we can make it. We also need to resist the chaos. Various psychologists and psychiatrists have analyzed Trump from afar, and they say he has a personality that likes to create chaos and keep all of us nuts. And he's doing a really excellent job of it. So we've got to resist that. He wants to be the center of attention at all times. He's trying to divert our attention from the Russia investigation by just talking crazy S-H-I-T. And so we need to make sure we resist that. We also need to remember our history. And I say to myself often, our people got through slavery, we'll get through Trump. And think about what LGBTQ people have had to go through. Their love was illegal, they were arrested, they weren't allowed to marry. Think about the internment of the Japanese Americans. Horrible times, we got through it. Think about the Mexican repatriation from 1929 to 1936, when as many as 2 million Mexicans were forced to go back to Mexico, 60% of whom were US citizens. Think of Jews in Nazi Germany. Think of the Chinese Exclusion Act. Think of slavery and Jim Crow. Think of the Palmer raids and all the anti-union activities that have gone on in our society. Think of the Trail of Tears and what Native American people have gone through. So remember that when you're feeling despondent. We will get through Trump. Someday we're going to go back and, do you remember Trump? Oh yeah, he was the president for a year. Pick your battles. I once read someone who said, you were put on earth to do something, not everything. You can't fight every battle. The beauty of this gathering is that you've got people taking care of various parts of the social and racial justice agenda. Have their backs, but you cannot do everything. Okay, progressive people, we cannot have circular firing squads. We cannot attack each other. It's important that we critique other progressive people, but I think one of the reasons we have Trump is that we were just picking at each other. Hillary's the same as Trump. No. There are many reasons that people had to be upset with her, but Hillary is not the same as Trump. Someone once said, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And as we go forth in the next year, 2 years, we have to keep that in mind. Stay informed. There's a lot going on. Try to stay informed. Be there for other people. Obviously, this group is about this. Act, vote, the midterms. And here's the last thing I want to say that's really important. We have to practice self-care. Erica Garner, the daughter of Eric Garner, who we saw die on TV, and she probably saw that on an endless loop, she died of a stroke at age 27. She was out there fighting for her father, and we need to learn from that. We need to take days off. We need to take care of ourselves. Somebody said, every once in a while, have a news holiday. Just take a day off from the news. You'll be just so elated by what happens. I once saw a documentary on Dr. King that said on April 3rd, the day before he died, he was sick and he had left Memphis. And apparently there had been violence in the streets that night and people from Memphis were imploring him to come back. And I often wonder if history would have been different if he had said, no, I'm sick, I can't come back. And so who knows? You can't know what would happen. But I think it's important for us to take care of ourselves and also not to ask the impossible of our leaders and the people out there in the street. Here's the last thing I will say. I've been looking for the perfect metaphor for what we do, and I haven't found it, but one thing that helps me is this. Think of ourselves as building a wonderful village, and it's a village of equality, housing, fairness, healthcare, and we're building that quite successfully, but there's some evil people at the gates trying to burn it down, throwing boulders over at us, and that's what we're doing. So we can't always be on the defensive. We certainly have to protect the village that we're building, but we have to remember that we are building something and we need to be positive. And being here today makes me know I'm part of something that's being built. And so the last thing I'll say is I'm just so happy to have been invited here to stand with you, to feel your energy. Over the years, I've realized part of what I do is I take your energy and give it back to you. So if you're feeling good, that's not because of me, it's because of you. I'm just giving you your best selves back. So San Diego, happy to be here. We will win. Take care.